We're fortunate to have someone on the phone with us who was, I guess, intimately involved in that. And then after Trump got named President of the United States, came on board as Donald Trump's first Deputy National Security Advisor, KT McFarland, is with us. And KT has written a book called Revolution, Trump, Washington, and We the People. Ms. McFarland, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, and you've got to call me KT.
Okay, fair enough. We're from the South. We just do that out of Southern pleasantries and politeness.
I'm from the North, and there are very few manners where I'm from.
Okay, fair enough. I got a weird question for you, and we'll get into the book here in a second. I've read a lot about you. I've listened to you give opinions over the years on politics, and you appear to be someone who understands the way Washington works, very familiar with the way Washington works, and what motivated you? What intrigued you about wanting to be involved with someone who got elected on the premise and notion that Washington doesn't need to work as it does?
Well, you're right. For years, I've been like a card-carrying member of the Republican foreign policy establishment. And I had, over the years, over the last decade or so, come to realize that the Republicans and the Democrats had pursued very poor policy. They'd made very poor choices on foreign policy. We'd gotten sort of sucked into the Middle East mindset, and we were wasting American blood and treasure in wars we couldn't win. And at the same time, we were ignoring the real threat, I think, which is China and the rise of China. So part of it was that. But in addition to that, I've traveled around the country a lot during the last 15 years and was meeting with people of all stages and all stations. And I noticed a real dissatisfaction with the way people have been treated, that they felt left behind, that the working class, the middle class, the people who uphold American values were being sort of shoved aside for different values or no values, and that they were really angry. And it wasn't an economic thing. In part it was, but it was even bigger than that. So I became a committed nationalist and populist before Trump ran for president. And then when he ran, I thought, okay, this is the one guy who's mean and tough enough to shake it up. And so I supported Trump from the very beginning. I joined his administration to help reorient American foreign and economic policies. And even though I personally got sort of pulled into the anti-Trump sort of milieu that's in Washington, I'm really glad I did, because I think it's a revolution. I thought in the beginning it was more about policies that are wrong. I realize now that it's a genuine American political revolution, that we the people, the common average American citizen, wants to shake things up, wants a change of direction. Washington, which is dug into a status quo way of doing things where they all scratch each other's back, they're resisting it, and I think that's what impeachment is. That's what the Russia hoax was. It's all about the Washington establishment thinking they're smarter and better than everybody else, and they should be in charge.
Let me ask you a question, and I say this a lot on the air. To me, the only thing the establishment needed to do post-Trump being elected in November 16 was to look in the mirror and honestly, introspectively self-evaluate. Why have we gotten to a place where the American public felt a reality TV star, someone who had no political experience, deserved the right to the highest office in the land? There was none of that. Why do you believe Washington failed to come to grips with the reality of how the American public felt about, I'll use Trump's language here, the swamp?
You know, you've actually hit on the main thing. They looked in the mirror and they didn't say, I see a person who's been wrong or that the American people have rejected. They looked in the mirror and said, I see somebody who's so much smarter and better by education, class, status, experience, whatever, to make decisions that the dumb Americans are too stupid to make. And that's why they pursued this, let's get rid of Trump at all costs, no matter what we have to do. I think there was the equivalent of a coup within the intelligence community at the highest levels of Washington government and media to get rid of a duly elected president of the United States. I saw it firsthand. The whistleblower worked for me, for example. And I think when they looked in the mirror, they didn't see what you and I might look in the mirror when we see ourselves as who we are. They looked in the mirror and said, those 63 million people who voted for Donald Trump were too dumb to know what was right for them, and it's our responsibility to save the nation, and we're going to do it. And I think ultimately they'll fail. They always have in the past. But that's, I think, the real nux of it, is they think they deserve to rule the country, and they don't. You know, that's what the American Revolution was all about. It's us. It's the only experiment in the history of the world where the average common man has the right to govern himself, not some elite group, self-appointed elitists, whether they be monarchs or aristocrats or oligarchs or government bureaucrats.
Last question. Appreciate your time. Name of the book is Revolution, Trump, Washington, and We the People. There are some of the smart crowd, and I respect some of their opinions. They try to argue that we are in a brush fire. This is a fit and rage, that normalcy will be restored, that at the end of the day, these people will come back to reality and, you know, the train will get back on the track. You're telling me you don't believe that. I use the analogy of we're summiting Mount Everest. I think we're at Base Camp 1. I think there's a lot of political disruption to come. Is that what this book is about, laying out kind of the terms and terminology of we are indeed in a political revolution?
Yes, and I think we've been in political revolutions before. We seem to have them every 40 years or so, starting with the American Revolution, Jacksonian democracy, the Civil War, Teddy Roosevelt, the Great Depression, Reagan, and now today. And it's because we are a dynamic, evolving people, and government by its very nature is status quo, wants to accumulate more and more power to itself. And you know, every 40 years we need to mow the grass, and that's what we're doing now.
Very well said. How can someone find your book, Revolution, Trump, Washington, and We the People?
Well, you're very kind to offer to tell them, and I will. They can go to Amazon and pre-order it now. I've just finished the audio book, and to me, that's even better than reading the book is for me to talk about it because I feel so passionately about this. But Amazon, Barnes & Noble, even your local bookstore.
Ms. McFarland, thank you for your time. Appreciate the insight. Have a great day.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.